name names. Yeah, we won't name names. We just, if we want to finish the gossip that we were just gossiping about, no, this person is a preposterous on a business and on a human level. But yeah, man.
That's I can't even wrap my head around that. That sounds like something like a game of telephone or something. Like
you don't even believe it. Yeah. Let's not even keep after the stream.
Okay.
We'll keep the trash talking going.
I'm happy to talk trash. Like I don't give a fuck. I'll talk.
But
but maybe not that.
Yeah, maybe not that. But yeah, I want to talk about a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
In addition to Horace and Pete. Well, I don't know, just like
Horace and Pete.
Oh, Horace and Pete,
dude. Okay, yeah, I'll save it. Are we going?
We're rolling. Yeah,
it's okay. Hold. Okay, so we're on YouTube now.
Oh, actually, good. Listening for a second to how it sounds on the YouTube.
Yeah.
Gives me a sense of the relative volumes. So there we go. It just went from 6 viewers to 3.
Nice.
It's like we weren't immediately hitting the ground running with like What's going on? I sort of have a sense of congratulations on the Wire review, by the way.
Oh yeah, that was nice. I did not
very good.
I didn't really see that coming. It was like you've heard me like privately sort of complain about like, oh, I made my favorite record ever, and like no one gives a fuck about it. But like that same week, I got like some nice reviews came in. I'm glad that someone has heard it and said that's cool.
No, people get it, man. Yeah. It's different. It's a very different direction. Everyone should check out Jeremiah's new record. It's very it's ballsy, man. It's bold. You're just like, I'm I don't know, would you say reinventing yourself? Is that, or maybe that's
I don't think
that's
so.
an extreme. Maybe that's an
no, I if anything, I would say it was sort of like a culmination of like organic growth and things that I'd sort of been like striving towards, and sort of like understanding, like I don't ever like most of the time when I'm listening to music, like on my, like from my phone, I'm listening to my library on shuffle. And in that way, I end up hearing some of my own music. I don't ever choose to listen to like past records, but every so often something comes on because I'm like shuffling through, thousands. And it's always like I enjoy the process of hearing, or not the process, but the exercise of hearing my own music sandwiched between other music and sort of in relation to other music, and just sort of getting a sense of like where it exists in the world in that way.
Yeah.
And like sometimes something will come on and I'll be listening to like an old recording and I'm like more forgiving of it often than I would imagine. And sometimes I feel like I'm listening and my thought is sort of like, I know what I was trying to do there. And I think I could do it better now. Just note to self, like, there's easier ways, there's better ways, there's ways you can introduce more clarity to these types of ideas, et cetera, et cetera. So like I could hear from some previous releases, like places I was trying to get to that I feel like on this newest release, Body of Light, I kind of got to more organically, more fluently, and more just sort of like coherently.
Oh yeah. Yeah. All right. So it's not only is it not a reinvention, not only is it not like I'm doing something new, you actually, it's like just following through on things you've been chipping away at. That's cool.
Yeah. And then sort of like I don't know if you've done this yet. I highly recommend next time you put out a record, if you haven't already, Bandcamp has this thing now where you can do like the night before the release, these like live listening parties.
Oh yeah.
And Toby did. Toby did one the other night for his new record, and I did one, and it was like super, actually very rewarding experience because you're just like live chatting with people that you're all listening together at the same time. And
all right.
But when I did that for this record, like just in live chatting with the other people, it kind of became clear to me I was like, oh, I didn't realize this was an influence. That was an influence. Like there's like really direct lines of influence on the record.
Like
Burial and Lester Young, and it's
I
like,
hear some Burial. Yeah. Lester Young. I don't, but that rules.
yeah.
Yeah. Burial, man. I mean, I was almost on that last track hearing some like Earth or something, or like the, like the, I don't know, just that slow groove.
Everyone, a lot of people, because I didn't think about this at all, though I am a huge fan. A lot of people said it reminded them of Borin and their Club of Gore, which, like,
Yeah,
I love
actually,
Borin. I didn't hear that at all, but
not a little. I mean, I
Yeah.
could see, in the grand scheme. Yeah, you tend to be. Am I right to say you tend to? Well, just because we were talking about non-musical past work, but kind of like hard on your older stuff. Like you listen to your old stuff a lot and get mad. I mean,
Well,
I know I do. I mean,
actually, Chris Corsano said this thing to me years ago when I was doing the podcast, where, and at the time I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, because he said, and now I totally agree with this and feel like it's completely true, where he said, I'm actually much more forgiving of the older the release, the more sort of like forgiving of it than I am of like the newer release, when like I should have known better. The process of it is closer to my memory. Like I should have done, and I super relate to that now. Like I actually find the older the release, sort of like I don't know, like I know you've done like talk therapy before. I've done it before. I haven't done it in very long.
I don't want people to. It's like,
but like sometimes, like in talk therapy, the therapist is like, they have you sort of like envision yourself as a younger person, as someone you're like, not someone that you are, but someone as like you're looking to at and sort of like trying to comfort. Like, how would you comfort young Charlie? How would you?
Right. Okay.
What would And so I kind of, when I've done those exercises and I see this like younger version of myself for whom I have like empathy and sympathy even, I feel that way towards those records, where I'm like, oh man, like I was trying, he may not have hit like every mark, but he was trying,
Yeah. Right on. I listen back to some old stuff. And by the way, everyone, we will get to Horace and Pete, but I just kind of want to catch up with Jeremiah too, so you will, this is all deep. I could talk about the weather and it would be deep, right? We all know that. But what's it called? But so are you really putting down the clarinet for a little while?
I don't fucking know, man.
Not that that's a bad idea. I love bold moves, dude. But like you, is that something what's the vibe?
It was funny. Like, I think a couple things are going on. And one of them, we were talking for a second before I think we hit live, because you're asking like, about when I ended my podcast.
Yeah.
And it was like exactly 5 years ago. It was like July or August of 2019. And the same feeling, I think, if I'm being completely honest, I think like my brain chemicals are maybe doing weird things again, as I think they were at that time.
Good or bad?
Well, that remains to be seen. Like, probably, good or bad, I don't know. But
let me ask, higher voltage or lower voltage?
I think lower voltage, but like if there's any manic end of the spectrum, it's like steeped in rage. And like
right,
like, which is not normally, like when you think about like bipolar and like manic depressive disorders, like it's like ecstatic highs and like crushing lows. I tend more towards like the crushing lows.
Okay,
but I think I've talked about this with you before, like this general feeling that when I'm doing anything, if I'm like mixing a record and all of a sudden I feel like it sounds great, the first thing to my mind is to say, fuck these motherfuckers, I'm making a great record. I don't know why. Fuck these motherfuckers.
No, it has to be negative. It has to be like it's like life is a zero-sum game. If I'm making something good, someone else's shit sucks. Right? It's just,
or just like, or like when you asked me like about ending the podcast, like I had not planned on it at all, and then one night I was just like sitting at a bar and I was like really angry about something, and I said, fuck these motherfuckers, I'm not doing this again. So it was completely impulsive, and
I wish I couldn't relate, dude. I wish. Yes.
And I played a gig a couple weeks ago, and I don't know, at the end of the gig I put my horn in the case and I just had this weird feeling of like, I'm not going to open this case again. And I got kind of like bent out of shape about some stuff the next day, and kind of spiraled into like not a good place for like a day or a few hours. And I don't know. I don't know. I think like it typically in the last like 20 years, it's become pretty clear to me that like my overall stability and well-being is served by daily music practice with with an instrument, not with Pro Tools, not with a synth, but actually, taking an instrument that does not require electricity and getting better at it.
I'm coming back to that, especially lately. Yes.
Yeah. So if I'm kind of like, I don't know, it's definitely something good for therapy, but the clarinet is like a very unforgiving instrument. It's not as like unforgiving as say the violin or the trumpet. But if you don't play it every day, you lose facility very quickly.
Yeah.
And I just don't like, a part of me right now has a feeling, I don't know what the fuck's going on, but I do have this overwhelming feeling of fuck these motherfuckers, which is and who these motherfuckers are. I'm not exactly sure. I have some idea. I just, I don't know. There's definitely, I'm experiencing some anger. I'm experiencing some sadness and some anguish. And part of me feels like I'm sick of doing a disservice to the instrument that has such a beautiful tradition. Part of me feels like I've been fucking, what am I keeping a practice up for? Like I'm completely irrelevant to the music scenes that I sort of careen. Like,
yeah, I don't think that's true, man. You just got written up in The Wire, man. I mean, I don't know. Like, yeah, I mean, irrelevance. Yeah. I don't know. I think that's just, I think that's not true, but I mean, it's not an insane feeling. I suppose we all sometimes feel alienated, I sometimes feel socially alienated by people that I'm supposed to be rolling with, but but I never feel creatively irrelevant. You know what I mean? Sometimes I feel like my attitudes are like not lining up. Whatever we talk about.
Well, I think for this like specific conversation, I do experience, and this isn't unprecedented with me. I do experience a manic sort of spectrum, a range with specific feelings, ideas, and topics. And with this particular thing of like, all right, fuck this, I'm not going to play the clarinet anymore. Like there is anger involved in it, and a sort of righteous anger of like, I look at what people are into, and this is, I can't believe I'm saying this publicly, and this will be available for people to hear in the future. I'm going to regret saying this, but it's sort of like this Lamont Young thing, which is these fucking pigs don't deserve this.
Well, yeah.
Which is, as embittered a place as one can end up when it comes to creative self-expression.
I mean, there are some people who don't deserve what you do. That's true. I mean, but a lot of people do deserve it. And
that's one part of it, though. There's also, anyway, I don't know if anything I've just said in the last few minutes has made like any sense.
It makes sense. It's no, I'm getting a sense of where you're at. I mean, yeah, like the thing, but you'll pick the horn up again, man. But your thing is never, your thing has never been, well, maybe you don't see it this way. I mean, I've always just thought of you as contributing to the history of music, not like specifically contributing to like the history of the clarinet exactly. You know what I mean? I've always thought of you as like just a music maker who the clarinet is like, that's like your sound source. And
I would agree with that.
And you're good at it, but that's not like the main,
No. Yeah. I'm not like chopping it up at, the woodwind shop with, actually, you want to hear some funny shit? I'll talk some shit right now if you want to. Do you know this clarinet player called Anat Cohen?
No,
it's fucking Israeli fucking maniac. This was years ago. I went to Roberto's Woodwinds. This is one of the strangest encounters I've had with a musician in New York, and this could have only come from an Israeli, because only someone who's utterly mentally ill and morally bankrupt. I don't, just for the record, I'm like, I don't like what Israel is doing is very, very bad. I don't hate Israelis as people. No, I mean, right now, like, well, you can, but let her rip. They're literally protesting in the streets for the rights of the IDF to rape fucking detainees. Like, it is a absolutely psychotic death cult. Yeah. The entire project of Israel has failed. Put it on record. But I was at Sorry, I guess I'm more manic than I thought.
No. Do it, man.
I was at Roberto's and I was looking to get this particular ligature that had been recommended to me, and I was talking to Tony, the guy that was working, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's the design is like this, that, and the other." And he was like, "Yeah, let me go check." And this woman was just sitting there listening, and she goes, "Oh, are you a clarinet player?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Oh, I'm just a girl. What is it that you're asking about?" And I was like, "What?" And she goes, "What are you asking him about?" And I said, "The ligature. It's a thing that holds the mouthpiece, it holds the reed to the mouthpiece." And she goes, "Oh, I'm just a girl. I don't know about stuff like that." And then Tony comes back out and he's like, "Hey, Anat, and it was this fucking like world renowned jazz clarinetist who, and I still don't even understand the angle of like what her sort of one-upping me was. It was one of the most strange encounters I've had with
maybe she probably thought you were supposed to recognize her or something.
Maybe.
That sounds like what that's like.
It was so bizarre. Yeah. And anyway, I just, we talked about whether or not we're going to talk shit. Like there's someone I don't mind publicly talking shit about.
No, I think it sounds like she thought you were supposed to recognize her, and
but that general tone of like a lot of jazz musicians in New York is like pretty ubiquitous, which is like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Like, why can't you like, what is this insane like competition that these people feel?
There was a while in the 90s where like Israeli tenor players, that was right. I mean, that was like a type of guy. Like, I feel like I would always, when I was first like getting out there, being like going to like jam sessions and being like, I'm going to be kind of a jazz dude. It was like, and actually it's funny, I can't think of any famous ones off the top of my head, but I mean, it would be like, there's like
famous, a type, famous is a relative term, but
but there would be like this type of dude who'd be like a young, really macho, kind of good looking, like annoying, works out a lot.
In Israeli?
Yeah. And like fucking and just like ripping like at some post Coltrane, not that interesting, but just destroying on some like, they'd be like, Liebman is killing, man. Liebman is so killing, Yeah. But anyway,
grotesque. Yeah. Well, I worked at the New School for like a number of years. And at the time that I was there, the halls of the New School were just littered with like slack-jawed Israeli fucking
slack-jawed
mutants walking around.
I remember it underbites being more the thing.
No, that's right. I said slack-jawed, but I meant, but definitely like something that is related to like extra chromosomes or
okay. I just, I mean, no, you can get like, it's okay. I mean, if you want to do Israeli physiognomy on the show, like you're definitely allowed to do that. I just don't want to like.
No, I know.
Yeah, I just the only reason I say that is because it's like I do hate like. Well, okay, like, okay, let's not do Gaza in general, but I just to put the period on, I just want to be like, because I hate the way people are like, anti-Zionism is the same as anti-Semitism. Because I hate that argument, I don't like it. When people really do get anti-Semitic, because it like proves it true, like muddies the waters, like, you know what I mean? Like, but you're Jewish, so you can be as anti-Semitic.
But it's not anti-Semitism because
it's anti-Israeli. Like I know.
Like they're not. They'll be the first to tell you that we are not the same.
Right.
Like I'm from a proud tradition of Ashkenazi Jews that fucking, wanders the world, tries to find comfort in another culture, tries to contribute, and like has as a culture contributed like pretty sick shit for a very long time. And there is the deepest part of my soul is informed by the most beautiful aspects of the Jewish tradition. And the older I get, the closer I feel to them. The older I get, the more I feel like an imperative to carry those precepts out into the world of genuinely, like, at any given moment, how can you make the world a brighter place? Whether it's helping someone, at the airport who can't figure out like the new technology to get checked in, whatever it is. And I just feel pretty adamantly that, like I said, the Israeli project has failed.
Yeah. We could say that project. Yeah.
It doesn't feel like any sort of Judaism that I want to be associated with.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like I genuinely fucking hate patriotism, and I genuinely
really. Well, I mean,
okay. Well,
yeah.
Well, yeah. There's
No,
I mean,
sorry,
aspects of history that I get pretty fired up about that are like patriotism adjacent, I suppose. But there's just, I mean, I see nothing in the Israeli project that I won't have anything to do with other than being a critic of.
Yeah. No, I'm with it. I am with it. What's going on over there is a fucking absolute atrocity. And yeah, that's the position here at Last Things. Anyway,
yeah, sorry. I don't know if I driven away the handful of people that are already.
No. But yeah, I don't know. Should we get to Horace and Pete?
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about it, man. Because I like we love the show, right? And we love Louis, and he's a genius. I sort of I had new thoughts about it, new feelings this time.
Did you watch it recently or something?
Oh yeah. I rewatched the whole thing, or I just I mean, I decided I wanted to, ask you about doing this, and then when you said you would do it, then I rewatched it and took the notes and did all the stuff.
You rewatched the whole thing in the last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jesus Christ!
It's okay if you didn't.
No. I watched it, and we should absolutely talk about what it was like watching it when it first came out, because that was very much part. I'm very confident that was very much part of the artistic statement.
100%. Yeah.
But so I rewatched it in the last couple of days. I rewatched a few episodes, a few pieces of other episodes, because I hadn't seen it in a while, and I listened to a couple of interviews with Louis about the show.
Yeah,
and I have to say, it is not a fun show to binge watch.
I feel worse. I feel worse.
It's just absolute tragedy from like top to bottom.
It's crushing. Oh, I'll tell everyone that this is going to be spoiler alerts in this. Yeah. And it's the show that if you're planning on watching it, you might want to wait to listen to this podcast after you've watched it, because we're going to spoil everything. But yeah, I mean, it's completely pessimistic, completely dark. Yeah, I feel like I had new criticisms of it, or at least a new context to see certain aspects of it this time around. That, I mean, it didn't make me like it a lot less, but it took an edge. There's certain edge of my. I mean, I've been considering that. I guess I still do consider it one of the best cultural things to come out of the 2010s. Mm-hmm. Which is not saying much, because it was the worst decade in the history of mankind. Mm-hmm. But I think I think it's on the short list of deepest shit. But still, there were some things that took the edge off. I don't know. Let's start with what we love about it. Or let's start with what we loved about it when it came out, maybe.
Well, I think it's super important, and not to sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but I saw, kind of like with Shane Gillis now, where it's like you're watching someone that you've enjoyed, like I saw Shane at the Stand a bunch of times with 30 other people, and since the first time I heard Shane, I was like, this is one of the funniest comics around, and it's crazy to see him now like selling out arenas and stuff. And I had kind of a similar thing with Louis. I'd seen him play maybe 3-4 times at the Comedy Cellar, just as like a like a lineup comic. He was big. He was selling out theaters, but during the week, those guys work at the Cellar and places like that. And then the last time I saw him in 2012 was at the New York City Center, which is like, I don't know, maybe a 10,000 seat venue. So all that is to say is that at the time, Louis had ascended to a place of like absolute incontrovertible cultural relevance. With his TV show Louis on FX, he got to a place where he was like a part of everyone's conversation. He became so ingratiated into like I guess you would call it like legacy media culture. Like,
he was approved. He was like establishment. He was an establishment artist. Like,
and he was like, on the cover of Time magazine. And I think he got, the Mark Twain Award at the Kennedy Center. And he was
Mark Twain Award.
He was winning Emmys. He was
just because he said the N-word so many times.
I guess,
that's how I know. We need to get on that, man. Get that award. But so when by the time
Horace and Pete came out, it was like less than a year before his whole thing came crashing down in the MeToo movement. And he was really at the height of his powers creatively, first and foremost, but also his ability to put a show together secretly. No one knew. It was completely off the books. He paid for everything himself. He, one by one reached out to all the cast members, cold calling them, saying, "Hey, it's Louis C.K." And they all took his call because he was like this major cultural figure at the time.
Yeah.
Paid for the thing himself, which could have only happened with, the ground he had built beneath himself.
Yep.
And if you were on his mailing list, there was just one Saturday morning. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was like a one line email. It was just like, here's a thing I made. Check it out. You click on it, and it's the first episode of Horace and Pete.
Yeah.
No explanation of here's my show. It's going to be 10 here. You just click on it, and there it is.
Yeah. Well, that's what I want. The Extra Life reunion, Secular Works Volume 2. I kind of wanted to do this thing of, dropping the surprise thing. It's a lot less out than what Louis was doing, though, because, he's like got like Edie Falco in the show, and it's like the most famous people. It's crazy how he was so respected that, he he'd be hanging with, he almost had like Jack Nicholson in it or something, right?
He spoke to him. Yeah.
He spoke to him. Yeah. Like he didn't take it, but
right.
He was on that level where like people on that level would at least take his calls, right? Yeah, like Jack Nicholson, Joe Pesci was almost on it. Yeah,
right.
And he completely self-produced this thing. He's like, just releases it on his website, and also, they were making it and writing it week to week. Is that right?
As I understand it, the first most of it was written well in advance. They waited, as I understand it, they would film it at the last minute for the sole purpose of being able to insert current events.
That's what it was.
Like at the bar, like Kurt Metzger, who's like kind of the only funny thing on the.
He's so good in that because he's just himself. Kurt Metzger is just himself. He's gone way more anti. He's kind of beyond anti woke now. He's almost getting to.
I think his brain's a little. I think his brain's a little broken.
He's getting a little bit like not as much of a comic anymore and more just a little more.
He seems like he's extremely online, and I don't know what color, black pilled maybe.
Yeah. But at that moment he was great though, because he was kind of like on some anti-PC, but like would fuck with the alt-right or make fun of them as well. Right. Like he had, I liked his. It was so, that show is so 2016. Man, it's the most, not just with the current events, but even the pre-tape, even the stuff that wasn't week-to-week stuff about Trump, the conversations at the bar. Yeah. I just think the whole thing is so, like it's just the spirit of that time, which I guess is not that different from the spirit of now. But Metzger is so sick on that because he's just like the nihilistic kind of like, you're all full of shit, right and left are all the same. Voting.
Well, now with hindsight, because that show came out before Trump was elected.
Yeah.
And, at the time, no one thought he had any chance. And then there was that period of time that set in where people were just in shock, and when you think about it, it's like, well, there's nothing shocking about what happened. And I have more, I'll say it. I find Trump to be an utterly reprehensible, grotesque imbecile. I didn't vote for him. I won't. I'm not going to be voting for anyone, but
me neither.
But it's pretty easy to understand that why people respond to him.
And he's hilarious, dude.
There's a variety of reasons, but when you look back on that particular aspect of Horace and Pete, where Metzger is expressing that sort of bleak nihilism about it, it's like, people like whoever watched Horace and Pete probably should have listened a little closer to what Kurt was saying.
That thing where he's like, why not Trump? He's like, we fucking deserve it. He's like, burn it all down. Like the there's stuff to like that one of that conversation at the bar between Nick DiPaolo and then that bearded, like just that utterly mealy-mouthed, annoying lib comic, whoever the fuck that guy is. That guy,
that kind of heavier guy.
Heavy dude. And it's like they're talking, and it's like Nick's like a conservative guy, and the other guy's very liberal, and then there's the guy in between who's like, why can't you just come together and respect each other? Like, it's almost quaint. You know what I mean? Like, they're not talking about right and left. You're looking at a conservative and a liberal, which is,
that conversation doesn't exist.
It's
anymore.
over. It's done. And it was about to be over. Like, that was like the last gasp of Louis being like, can't we all just, and it's like right before it's like, no, you can't. It's just Civil War. But Metzger is he's like the Joker figure on that, or like not literally a Joker, like from the movie, but like the trickster.
He's the only,
the Hermes guy who kind of like just subverts everything,
Well, having like dipped back into it this past week, like in my memory, the show had more humor to it. There's like nothing really funny about it. It's like, it's a pretty gut wrenching experience. And I sort of remembered, maybe correctly and incorrectly at the time, it felt like spiritually connected to Cheers.
I don't know why that didn't occur to me. Yeah. I mean,
but Cheers to me, like a couple years ago, I got kind of like reinterested in it. It's a very grim show that like they made a comedy out of, but it's like, if Cheers is about like a professional athlete who ruined his life by being an alcoholic.
Is that I never watched it.
Yeah. Opens a bar with his, early onset dementia mentor. And it's a show about a bunch of adults who don't really know each other and get trashed every night in a bar. That's pretty grim.
Yep.
But and the music on Cheers, like the interstitial music is like pretty.
I always found it depressing, but I was like 9 and I didn't really know why. And I guess
everything's brown and sort of like
well, it's Boston. It's depressing inherently. But
I think Horace and Pete is less connected to Cheers than I had in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I kind of like that's sort of like the social commentary element. I mean, there's a lot of there is this like social commentary thing going on where it's like he's not making moralistic points, but there is this like cultural criticism thing going on in that show where it's like the generations thing. It's not just, you don't get the sense that it's a show just about people in this timeless way, like human nature. It doesn't seem like it's about like human nature. It's like about zeitgeist shit. Well, okay, it's not like that's one or the other, but it's like about the past and tradition and like breaking from the past and like, where are we? We're going to shut down this bar that's been around for like 100 years. The abusive older generation, you see all this stuff from, the older the older Horace and Pete, the Horace who has died, being overtly abusive. And that's not ambiguous. You're like, this is bad. He's a wife beater and stuff. And then you've got Horace, who did something very bad, but nowhere near as bad as that. But, and then you've got the younger generation. There is this sense of like, no one can look at an older generation for any kind of positive example of anything. You know what I mean? Like, there is this sense that the whole vibe of the show to me is just like, where are we now? What we like culture, like what, like morally and shit. You know what I'm saying? Men and women. These sort of,
it's interesting. Yeah. I didn't cause like when I watched that show, and last night I watched 3 in a row, and it was just like, God damn. Like what I'm, besides just feeling like gutted after watching it, like, to me, it's like, it's a show about like family and how inescapable your family is, no matter like as an inescapable part of you. And in the very last episode, just before Pete returns and, are we spoiled? Yeah. Like, and stabs Horace. There's that actor, I think his name is the guy with the funny hat, Tom Noonan. And he tells this story about how he was talking to a little girl who has a stomach pain, and it hurts so bad that she wants to punch herself in the stomach. And he explains that like when somebody is hurting you, you have to be nice to it because it's something that's inside of you.
It's a part of you. Yes, I remember.
Yeah, and that to me was like really sort of shorted up, where it's like, oh yeah, like this is about, like, you cannot escape your family. You know, I don't have a relationship with my father, but I'm very cognizant of the fact that, like, no matter what I want or see for myself or the world, like, he is very much a part of me. Like,
Yeah,
literally, metaphorically, like the you know, whatever rage problems I have, whatever way I have of communicating to people that I care about and showing my affection, like it's whether I want it or not, it's like DNA coded.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, he's specifically articulates that question, right? He's like, what do we do? What do we do with people who hurt us but are a part of us?
Yeah.
But the thing is, but he asked that as a question, but he also get that this guy, you know, he gives the answer of like, you know, he's like, we must be kind to people who hurt us. And it's like, that's not true. You don't
It's not true.
have to.
Well,
I mean, you know what I mean?
yeah, it's
like,
not necessarily true, right?
It might be, yeah, and not necessarily true. I mean, it might be good advice in a certain cases, but I sort of yeah, this is gonna get. I don't want to rush into all the new stuff that I think about that show,
Okay.
but blame and like culpability is huge, like
Right.
throughout the show. Just the issue of like guilt, people having done things, big and small. You know, Louis says from the beginning in one of those interviews, he said like, you know, one of his first inspired ideas, you know, he had I guess the first is like, it's going to be like a family bar. And then one of the earliest thoughts he had, he's like, Horace did something very bad. Yeah. Like that was like one of his primary things that like the show is, I don't know if it's centered around, but it was like primary for him that Horace did something super bad. And so many people on the show are like even in passing, there's so many people at the bar who will be like a complete asshole. And then the next sentence, they'll say something where you see that they were hurt too. And you're just like, oh, like hurt people. You know, it's like, it just seems like this constant message of like, yeah, that we should forgive people who hurt people because they are hurt too, or something that runs through the whole show.
Well, certainly.
Which is not necessarily true. We don't have to actually like, I don't know, like,
well, yeah, I mean, hopefully, you know, you can transcend that. But something I noticed this watch around, and it's like related to this, you know, this topic of abuse was, how can I say this? Give me a second. I want to choose my words carefully.
Yeah.
I know. So someone I've talked to a good deal, someone I know has a history of sexual abuse in their family. And when this person has talked to me about it, it sounds like it goes back generations, and it's actually not male perpetrated,
right?
Which is, you know, not something you hear about a lot. It's like female on female sexual abuse.
Okay.
And that's always been kind of mysterious to me. And I don't know that Horace and Pete answers it, but the scene where Jessica Lange's character comes upstairs and is like being really sexually inappropriate with Horace, with Louis C.K.'s character.
That's right.
And it sort of informed like my ideas about this abuse that I just referenced a second ago, where like you see her behaving in a way that on the surface is about sex and sexual pleasure, but it's actually just this like compulsive behavior, this deeply, it helped. You know, you don't think about sex predators as experiencing. I don't think any like reasonable, educated, informed person thinks of a sex predator as just, oh, that's what that person has to do to get off. Like, we're all pretty clear that it's, you know, a mental illness and a sickness and a compulsion, but you really see it in that character in that scene where it's like, oh, this isn't about sex at all. This is compulsive behavior that is probably, or most definitely not understood by the person who's perpetrating it.
Sure.
And it kind of like left me, on the one hand, like understanding it better, but just sort of cold. Like, Like,
Mm.
this is just a behavior that happens. Like, this is just like,
Right,
it's
right.
actually like kind of, but it's not benign, but it's kind of like benign how it occurs. It's,
Yeah.
you want
Wait, you mean benign or banal? Or
banal.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
not
Yep.
absolutely malignant, not
Yeah, yeah,
benign.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But you know what I
Do
mean?
do you mean it left you cold, like in the sense that there was so little judgment placed on it, like it was just not like
Yeah, that's part of it, but also just that as this behavior, like if you're on the receiving end of sexual abuse, it's a moment, and if you're unlucky enough to have it be a recurring event, this is something that's going to mark the rest of your life, no matter what.
yeah.
No matter what, it's like a switch gets turned, and this is now like part of your DNA. But when you see it from the perspective of the person perpetrating it, it's like, this is just compulsive behavior. They're not
Right.
even going to think about this later. Maybe they will, who knows? But it's like, it isn't defining in that moment. It's not defining their life the way it is the person who's being victimized by it.
Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I guess all abuse is like that to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it definitely. I know Louis, in his real life talks about how he was, his father was physically abusive and violent, with the family and stuff. But I can't. Yeah, I can't help but get this sense though on the show. I guess with the Jessica Lange thing where she's being like kind of molestery with him. Yeah, I guess they kind of they're not making a clear commentary on it maybe or something like as far as, but like, I mean, as far as Horace being, how they showed, well, as far as Louis talking about getting beaten in real life and on this show, his character, his father was abusive, who he is played by himself in the past. It seems pretty clearly like, I don't know if justification is the thing, but I mean, this explanation, I mean, it only makes Horace more sympathetic to know that he's been that he was abused as a kid,
Sure.
And I kind of, this gets into some stuff like I don't know if I like rush into it, but it's like this sense that when I first watched it, and actually numerous times that I've watched it since it came out over the years, something that I always loved about it is something which this time around rubbed me a little bit the wrong way. Although I still love it, and I still love it for these reasons as well, but there's a little edge to it. Yeah, just this thing of that you're just this thing of like that people who do bad things, something bad happened to them, or they've got things going on in their life, and you've got to be compassionate. I loved the way things were presented in that way. It seemed something was like realistic about it, right? I mean, this sort of realistic thing of like hurt people, like that's true, but like, I don't know, this time I was kind of like, he can't come down at all on like morally judging anyone or really present ways to reduce harm or anything. Like it just it seemed like there was this constant making excuses for people being fucked up, and I mean, there's a sadness to it because Horace's character, like, you do see how he's trying to be less fucked up than his dad. So, I mean, I guess that's good, at least in this way. I mean, that you don't see him as a kid. I noticed these little things. As a kid, when he's getting his father at the table is like fucking with him, and he smiles a little bit. Dad is like, "What are you smiling at? Be a tough guy. Like, be a fucking tough guy." Remember, and he twists his arm and stuff. And I was thinking, it's like Horace, he's like, "Don't smile. Show me tough guy. Show me tough guy." And then I think Horace as adult, he doesn't smile ever on the entire show until that last thing where Amy Sedaris's character pops in and is like weird, and he finally smiles, and you think, and it's like, I was actually watching it this time. His smile, it was such an uplifting thing that in that moment I forgot that he's about to get stabbed to death, like in 2 minutes. Like I actually forgot. I was like, oh, there's a happy ending, right? He finally smiles. But I was just thinking, like, the whole series, right? He doesn't smile at all, but he's also not a tough guy at all either.
No, he's a sad sack.
He's a sad sack. So there's this way that it's like that's the best he can do to not be like his father, you know, is to like just withdraw, not allow himself to have a life.
Yeah, I mean, the character,
I mean?
Like at the very end of the at the very end of the series, like the very end when his maybe it's the second to last episode or last, I can't remember, but when his son turns up, his estranged son, and asks Edie Falco's character, what was my dad like? And you expect like, oh, he was sweet. He was, as she just says, he wasn't really a person. He wasn't nice. He wasn't, she said
he's like just some guy.
Yeah, he's basically a non-person. And I guess, well, first to respond to like what you just said, like I think like something that I enjoy is not maybe the right word, but something that I'll just use the word. Okay. Something that I enjoy about the show is like the absence of value judgment throughout. Yeah. So much so that like in the moments where the characters are like having like intimate conversations with each other and seeking advice and comfort from each other, the advice and the comfort that's always shared is like so it's the advice that only someone who's like in their 50s can offer, because it is so worn down and not what you would ever think you should tell someone. Like,
no, I know the whole show is middle-aged. Like it feels like the world that it's in is like about 50 years old.
When Laurie Metcalf's character is like, I can't stop fucking my husband's father, and I'm on the verge of ruining everyone's life. And Louis C.K.'s character is just like, well, just keep doing it and wait till everything falls apart.
Right. No, yeah, he goes, at first he's like, you got to stop. And she's like, I'm not going to, he smells too good and he's beautiful. And she's like, and he's like, I know. Like, he understands. Yeah, I know. But see, like that. Yeah. But that's the kind of shit though, that it's like this time around, I'm like, something about it. I mean, I also have more theories about this, but like, well, something though on this topic, right? Of like, of like not wanting to be a monster or something. There's this, but on the topic of that, it's not just people in general, but there is this like historical social commentary, like generations thing. I saw, actually, I kind of saw this model in White Lotus also in the second season. Do you fuck with the White Lotus?
I saw the first season. I didn't see the second season.
It's not like the deepest thing ever. I like it a lot.
It's enjoyable.
It's good. But this thing of like where Horace is, this should have like what it means to be a man, right? I mean, there's a lot of that, man. I mean, it's a lot of like masculinity and men versus women and stuff. And it's like this time around I was like, oh yeah, okay, so his dad is just a fucking monster, just absolute. And then Horace, and then the generation beneath Horace, beneath Louis C.K. Remember when he meets his daughter's new boyfriend, and he's just like the most exaggerated, just cuck, soy, like, you know what I mean? He's just like, yeah, I love your daughter. She's so much smarter than me, and she's a better lawyer. So I figure, if I can't win in an argument, I may as well join the smart, you know what I mean? And it's like, and Louis is like, okay, so you love my daughter because she's smarter than you. Okay. And you see this kind of like, disgust, like kind of get disgust, like he's trying to hold back disgust because he's trying to like support, but he's just like, who is this fucking, and then you see the younger generation on these Tinder dates and passing, and he's just like, yeah, I just want to play video games and fuck. I don't do anything. There's just this like,
right.
You know what I mean? So it's like you've got this thing where the generation above him is like just wife beating monsters. That's what it means to be a man. Just don't cry, no empathy, just beat the shit. And then the younger generation are just like these invertebrates, like just everything that reactionary, manosphere type people freak out about, and I freak out about. I hate this kind of man. But then you get Louis's generation, which is kind of our generation, a little older, Gen X. It's like he's kind of caught between, where it's like he's done some fucked up shit vis-a-vis women, but he's also not like macho about it, and he kind of feels bad. And he's like kind of caught. And it's like he doesn't have any answers for the younger generation. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he knows it's bad to beat your wife. Like, that's like bad. But it's like, but he's also like, so I'm just gonna, so Mike, the next generation is just gonna be these soy boys. Like, what?
Yeah.
Just to me, that's the generational thing in the movie. It's just
yeah.
It's like this lost. There's just this Gen X like lost. I don't know. Like I saw that in the second season of White Lotus. There's just this. It's very similar where Michael Imperioli, like the father's like this total scumbag, the son is this cuck, and he's like a sex addict who like is embarrassed that he's a sex addict. You know, like I don't know. That's that's this kind of. I mean, I guess there is moral judgment. I guess we at least we judge the father, the oldest Horace, for being a wife beater. I mean, that is at least put out there as like that's bad.
I mean, so it's his father, and then I think like more memorably for myself and a lot of people is his uncle, Alan Alda's character, Pete, who is just utterly vicious and like he's got some funny lines for for people like really us, but just I mean an absolute monster. Literally zero redeeming qualities, and it's funny, like there's so many. I think it's worth talking about. Maybe we could talk about it in a minute, but there's so many devices used in the show that are taken directly from the theater. It's basically a theater piece, and
it's a play, yeah,
and it's like one thing to think about is like because. And maybe I don't want to like derail the conversation, but
no, derail. I got
because it's a multi-camera show and not a single camera show. Like you know what the difference in these things is, right?
I mean, multicam is like a sitcom.
Yeah, multicam, just real quick, was a device literally created by Desi Arnaz, Ricky Ricardo.
Okay.
When he and Lucy signed the deal to do I Love Lucy, very quickly he realized that filming with a single camera in a studio, Lucille Ball wasn't as funny, that she needs an audience. So he developed this method of 3 cameras in the studio with a live audience, and they just cut to the cameras. That way, like you get the feel from a live performance. And so, a single camera show, most things are single camera, The Sopranos, for instance, it's like, it's one camera, it's all edited together. And what you get with single camera, one of many things that's different from multicam is that you can play with the passage of time in a way where like you can cut, like, so there's a scene, 2 people are talking in a kitchen, boom, cut. You're now in a bar the next day or on a job site. As where with like multicam, it's more like the theater where the passage of time is real. It's happening. It's there is no hard edit where you're in one scene and now it's the next day, it's the future, it's the past. It's from the theater.
Yes. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Time moves in a completely linear and in the moment fashion.
No.
And so that is. Okay, I'm trying not to derail in a million different directions.
No, derail it.
But just from a creative perspective, because clearly Louis C.K. reached a level of creative self-expression that I genuinely think very few people get to. Yeah. It's largely based on his technical know-how. He's known for doing all of his own editing, doing all of his own blocking and directing and everything else. But so all that is a long way of saying one of the devices that you see that to me was just like so effective in the show and immediately tells you who this fucking guy is and what's up is in that first episode, Horace and Pete are sort of doing like a silly dance with their brooms while the jukebox is playing.
Yeah.
Uncle Pete, Alan Alda's character, comes in. The first thing he does is unplug the jukebox and just immediately suck all the joy out of the room.
Yeah.
And boom, he's in. They are back.
And it's barely any joy too. It's like, I mean, but it's just a tiny little glimmer of like them just a little bit moving and stuff. It's barely. It's like barely, and even the tiniest little bit, he has to. Yeah, he
crushes it, and they immediately revert to like their slouched forward like shell of being abused humans. Like, yeah, it's such an effective way to introduce a character. You know immediately who that guy is from the moment he walks in.
Well, yeah, every character, whether it's a major one or even minor people walking in the bar, they just have this way of like so much of the person's story is just immediately evident. like right off the bat. I mean, with the writing too, but yeah, the camera thing, I hadn't really thought of that. I mean, because I'm not as visual. I don't know. I'm not really like a film guy in the sense of I like knowing. Obviously, we respond to these things as audience, but I'm not as conscious about like what about the camera work is hitting.
Well, I mean, I think a pretty crucial aspect of the show is because, again, because it's a multicam show. It's closer to theater than it is film. And they shot it on a soundstage rather than like on location. And any soundstage is going to have, it's going to become an aspect and a character of a show. Like the soundstage has a residence. Like, you know instantly, whether you're familiar with how television is made or not, the second you start watching that show, it's like something feels different about this. And it's because actors are acting in a unpopulated soundstage. Normally there would be a live studio audience.
Yeah.
Like the show, much of the immediate grim impact of the show, I think, is due to that, which is very intentional.
Yeah. You feel like there's an absence, right? Yeah. Right. The feel of it. Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's not just that he's a comedian that you would be expecting laughs. It's that, I guess that multicam thing and the studio set, subconsciously you're like, oh, this has a sitcom flavor to it.
Yeah.
But there's no laughter. Yeah. And
there's no laughter.
And very little that's supposed to be funny. That's not true, actually, because like overall the plot is the least funny thing ever, but the little lines are actually hilarious, especially in the conversations at the bar, obviously.
And Louis is fucking funny because he does know when to punctuate something with something like I think it's the third episode where it's Laurie Metcalf, who is his ex-wife.
No.
And it starts like with something you never see in television or even in film. It starts with the episode starts with the camera close on her face, and it's just 10 uninterrupted minutes of her telling this story. You don't know who the character is.
Yeah. You never seen her before. All of a sudden. Yeah.
There's no introduction of who it is. You have no idea what you're watching, and you're just listening to. I mean, she's an amazing actress, Laurie Metcalf.
That is like a tour de force. I could not believe. Yeah, that was a tour de force performance.
And as it goes on, when it finally
unbroken, no editing, just 10 minutes telling the story. It's like captivating. Yeah,
it's utterly captivating. And then the episode sort of opens up. The camera switches between her and Louis' character. It's still predominantly about her. And then Louis, it's clear that it's really happening. It's clear he's not acting. Like he breaks down and is crying during the scene.
Does he cries in that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Okay. He's broken because when they start talking about the way that he ruined his family, that's why she comes to him, is because I'm ruining my family right now. You ruined our family. How do you navigate this? It's this like gut wrenching 30-minute long episode. And the very last line is Alan Alda. Uncle Pete walks in and goes, I never understood why you married that cunt.
Yeah, right. That's the last. Yeah. No. Yeah, and just the way he comes onto the camera, like you didn't know he was anywhere near there, and you're like, was he just there the whole time, just like listening to this and just fucking?
Well, it's just so you're just like utterly like.
No, he has this.
It's this gut wrenching thing, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, and then. Just to kind of snap you back, Alan Alda. I don't know why you ever married that cunt.
that actually reminds me of like in the show Louis. Do you remember that episode where he's like kind of dating this like this plus size like fat woman or whatever? And there's one of these things where there's a scene that's like actually quite. It's not the very end in the middle where it's like I don't know. They're like negotiating stuff about how he feels about her body, and like I don't know. It's very like serious and nuanced, like whatever. You're like getting a feel for that he's embarrassed, but he's attracted to her, but he's not sure, and she kind of knows that, and then she walks away after a little bit, and it's like Jim Norton's face just comes into the thing, and he goes, "Yuck." It's just like this complete asshole. Just some asshole that has no interest in like the human experience or anything. He just wants to shut it down completely. And they've just picked the best guy to do it.
Yeah. I mean, and clearly, if you didn't know this already, Louis C.K. understands comedy and comedic timing. Like, he's definitely without question on my Mount Rushmore.
Oh, yeah. No,
without question.
Me too.
Top 5.
No, just like you mean artists, right? Like not even.
Well, I meant comedians.
Comedians, yeah, comedians. Is he? No, he wouldn't be top 5 artists for me. He would be top. No. Who are your top 5 comedians? He would be but as far as artists in general, he would probably be in my like top 20, I guess.
Yeah.
If I did 20 though, they'd all be musicians probably, just because
Really?
what I'm into. Not sure.
Yeah.
But who are your top 5 comedians? That's good. This is a good derailment. We'll get back to Horace in particular, but I'm interested.
I know who they are. I'd have to say that, like, I would intentionally not include people like, Richard Pryor, and Robin Williams, just because like that existed before me, or even like Eddie Murphy, who I watched. No, I mean, I watched Eddie Murphy as a kid, but I would think specifically about people that like I've seen live and I feel like invested in their comedy. I would say Louis, Patrice,
same,
Burr, Chappelle, Norm.
That actually might be mine.
Yeah,
that actually might totally be mine. Except, wait, which one was I thinking? Bill Burr is tarnishing his own legacy. There's been a decline, like his decline. He's still the classic. I mean, the first 4 special. I mean, that's like Zeppelin. The first 4 Zeppelin records. But yeah, I mean, he has. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you this.
He's fallen.
I don't know if you've seen the news the last couple of days. I've never been to a Broadway show, and I have a Google notification alerting me when it goes on sale. He's going to be they're bringing back Glenn Ross, and he's in it.
Yeah, I'm going to watch that.
That's literally the best thing I could possibly imagine.
Go see that. I'm going to go see that.
I'm going for my birthday. I told Angie it's happening in the spring.
Nice.
My birthday is in the spring. I was like, Angie, for my birthday, you are buying me the most expensive ticket.
Yeah.
To see this fucking show.
I'm into that. No, I'm into that. They're bringing back Parsifal with Patrice. Actually, no, I don't know why. It's like he's like an opera singer and back from the dead. Yeah, totally. No, Louis is an absolute.
But also I would just say I wouldn't include comedians like Mullen and Shane, who I think are of the highest echelon, just because like their output is still young and there's more to come.
Yeah.
But I foresee their busts being carved into my Rushmore.
Yep. I think Mullen is one of the funniest guys going, but I don't know if I consider his like we've said, his stand-up is great, but it's like his riffing on podcasts.
Well,
that's way deeper, right? Like
I genuinely think that Nick Mullen, perhaps, well, definitely, I think Nick Mullen more than anyone is so funny that he has rendered stand-up comedy obsolete.
That feels like an overstatement to me, but I know what you're saying. Like he's really questioning. He's questioning the supremacy of stand-up as the ultimate form.
Well, I've told you, in just regular conversations, that Cumtown ruined stand-up comedy for me. There's nothing funnier than Cumtown. There's nothing funny. When you listen to Cumtown from like 2018 to 17 to 18, like within that time frame, there is nothing funnier.
Yeah, definitely nothing funnier going on currently. I mean,
And when you think about like, I've lost a lot of interest in stand-up comedy, but when you watch the process of a comedian like get their act to be at the place where they can film a special for HBO or Netflix or whatever, you're literally watching someone destroy their art. It starts out as a really funny idea working out in a club, and by the time it reaches that level, it's so rehearsed that there's no spontaneity. They're wearing like a dumbass outfit and dumb shoes, and it's like it doesn't have.
Yeah,
I mean the improvisation is gone, the spontaneity is gone.
We've said that, or you've said that, but I mean, you don't think that these specials though, like the great Louis specials or the great or Patrice Elephant in the Room, I mean, you don't think those are amazing?
Well, I do, and I think Louis transcend most because he put such a premium on every single year, brand new material. I burn it off. Like he keeps it as close as fresh and the meat as close to the bone as possible. With the stand up. Then you see someone like fucking Mark Maron, and it's like, is this even a person? Like, it's not...
Dude, I hate we've said this, but sometimes it's good to rehash our off mic conversations. But no, dude. I mean, Mark Maron is like actually, it's not just that he was never funny. I mean, he is. Like I like actually despise. I think that is that's toxic. That's a toxic. Dude,
he's bad for culture. He's bad for comedy. He's like he is just the worst version of a boomer, like a self-satisfied, unfunny, disinterested boomer. And
just lib shit.
I gotta say, like, revisit going back to Louis, going back to Horace and Pete, revisiting Louis this last week, listening to interviews, it is utterly disgusting and shameful the way that people like Mark Maron threw Louis under the fucking bus when the shit went down.
Oh, did he? Okay, yeah, because we can get to this. It's funny. Ahead of time, I said to myself, like, let's like, why does everyone always have to talk about cancellation of people who got canceled? Why can't we talk about their work without even let's do this thing without even mentioning that he got canceled. Yeah. But actually, the more that I think about it, there are actually things I want to say about that are actually germane to Horace and Pete.
Well, you know, so I mean, like, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, but you finish the thing though. Did Mark Maron? This is not that deep, but I'm interested. Like, did Mark Maron threw him under the bus in a way, or
I believe? I mean, I don't think I'm misremembering that. I will say this: listening back to the interviews that that Louis did around the time of Horace and Pete, he's talking about all the projects that he's got coming up. One of them was an animated series with Albert Brooks. The other was like a deal to produce all these shows for FX. And it's so sad listening I felt sad listening to him talk about these things because you know that within the year he's going to be exposed as, you know, this person who's, you know, who has sexual malfeasance in his history. And that none of those things came to fruition because all the people that he was working with just turned their back on him.
Yeah.
It's sad. Like, did he do something fucked up? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Like, well, he got. I mean, people definitely did him dirty. I mean, it's like, you know, I can't. It's hard. I don't know, the word deserve. I often have a hard time with because I'm just like, who deserves anything? But I definitely can't say he deserved what happened to him. I don't know. I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, I'll say this. I do think that Louis, like, whatever people ascribe as like the benefit, or not the benefit, but the high points of like Woody Allen's output, like Louis is actually what you think that is. Like, Louis is like, and the thing,
Louis is way deeper than Woody Allen.
Way deeper, no question.
Way deeper.
But there's that famous Orson Welles quote where he's talking about Woody Allen, how he despises Woody Allen and he despises that Chaplin-esque character of Woody Allen because it's this, like, what he presents is this sort of like nebbish, like infantilized man, when in actuality he's just a fucking piece of shit.
I hate Woody Allen.
Yeah, me too. And Louis' thing was always like, no, I am a piece of shit. Like, he always put forward this flawed, like, but it was not in that like weak sniveling way. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. Well, this gets to, okay. I do, when we were talking about, when you were talking about him at his height, of not necessarily creatively, but almost at his height creatively, but his, actually, he may not yet even be at his height creatively. He might even be onto some next, but he, when he was before his cancellation, when he was like the most mainstream accepted cover of Time magazine or whatever, I remember one of those things said Saint Louis, like it was like, and it wasn't, I mean, it was a little bit sarcastic, I guess, but there was this idea, at least at the time with a lot of people, that there was something really morally upright about how much how he admitted to certain types of misogyny and how he sort of would just admit that men kind of are, you know, like
gross,
bad to women or something like that, you know? And it's like this kind of thing, like whatever those bits, I can't remember the bits, but where he's just like, you know, like, women, why do you even get in a car on a date with us? Like, you're going to go missing statistically. You're going to get shit like that. It's like, I think there was actually a thing where he was getting applauded on some almost feminist approved grounds, right? Of like being like, he's honest. He's like being honest about, but this is the thing. He was being honest about this stuff, and everyone was like, that's brave that he would admit it. And then it's like then the specifics of what that is in his actual life come to light, and everyone's like, he's fucking Hitler. Like, you know what I mean? It's like people are okay with
so
him.
Bizarre. Yeah.
People are okay. He's like, I'm a piece of shit. I do fucked up things, and people are, you know what I'm saying? It's like, but then once they see the actual example and they hear from to say victims is a fucking exaggeration, but to hear from the mouths of the people on the receiving end of his thing, all of a sudden now it's like, oh, I can't, now he's tainted. I can't touch him. It's like, he already told you. Yeah. He already told you.
He's been explicit. Like, it's funny. Like, clearly, you know, when you read about, and then we can go back to the show, I guess, but like when you read about what his transgressions were, you know, the nature of his sexual misconduct, like, it's clearly this guy gets off on shame. And I was wondering, I was like, okay, so when that New York Times article hit, did he just like have like bust harder than he ever did in his entire life.
Right. No, it's all just part of his just like his just like libidinal like excesses and stuff. Yeah. The I gotta think, man, I do have to think that, you know, when I said it's the most 2016 show in the world, it's not just about like you know, talking about Trump and whatnot on the show and the current events, you know, the fact that it literally was, they were keeping it current week to week, but just as like the show came out like a year or less than a year before he got canceled, and a year before Me Too, or like right at the beginning of the ascent of the Me Too thing. And the amount that I would want to talk about this is, I don't know, man. But for me, 2016, this thing came out 3 months before that shit with Andrew went down.
Right.
And I don't love talking about that, partially because I don't like to dance on his grave, and I feel sort of bad about how that went down. But it's hard for me to disentangle this stuff, man, because I was like, actually, I was actually, you know, still processing. I had like just watched the show when that shit, when Andrew got canceled, and my role of, you know, canceling him, and then the subsequent feelings of, you know, guilt about having participated in that, and, you know, the sort of moral ambivalence about, like, you know, like what's, you know, what's fair to happen to someone, and the fact that what Andrew did is like almost the exact same thing that Louis did. I mean, maybe a notch or two worse, a notch or two worse, but then, and then Me Too full throttle the next, you know.
Yeah, you were on the vanguard of that.
Yeah, I don't want to be head that. Yeah, but yeah, no, he was on the fucking vanguard. I was anyway. But I mean, and so I have some thoughts that we'll get to about the timing of this show, actually. But that you know, I had actually already heard about Louis doing that shit. Had you heard about him doing that before he got? Yeah.
Everyone knew it.
And it's funny because I had heard about it from Andrew. So it was just like this weird, like, and I remember Andrew saying, he was like, I wonder when he's going to get canceled for that. I remember him saying that. He was just like, I wonder when that's going to happen. Everyone knows it, but no one's doing anything about it, you know? Yeah. But I have to think, man, and this is like, okay, I don't mean consciously. I don't mean he was consciously doing this, but fucking maybe. Making this show that's about a guy who did something sexual that's bad, but not the worst thing on earth. He's not a monster, but it's bad. And then having the show be so much about like either forgiveness or suspending judgment of people, or, you know, like being like, hey, you know, hurt people. And the guy's father was abusive. I wonder, you know, if it was like this vibe of like he had this ticking bomb of shit that he knew he was going to get canceled for. Not that the whole show is about that, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like that this was a thing in his life that he was like wrestling with morally with himself, and paranoid that he's going to get got. And on some level being like, hey guys, people do bad shit. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I don't know. If there is an aspect of that, I would imagine it was probably subconscious and not.
That's mostly what
you know. Yeah. I think like I actually genuinely believe that Horace and Pete is a work of genius.
No, I still think it is.
I think it's a high point, but I think it's a work of genius. And part of what I mean by that is, and I heard him talk about his like how this the script came to him. It sounds like what happens when someone is experiencing moments of genius, where like the writing sort of does itself, like, and you step back and then you look at what's on the page and you go, holy fucking shit, like how did that happen? Like and I think like it really takes a great artist who is deeply engaged in their art and their craft to access those moments. but there's an aspect of those, clearly an aspect of those moments where like you're in a zone, it's not autopilot, because that sort of diminishes what it is.
Yeah.
But you're accessing you're accessing your subconscious. So definitely, like, you know, his whatever was going on with him, I would have to imagine trickled out in that way. And clearly his whatever his hangups are or were sexually, like it showed up in all of his art.
True.
As we just said, you know?
Yeah, no, right. I mean, it's weird to, I guess it's not like totally right on to single out Horace and Pete as being specifically about those issues of guilt and blame and shit with women. You're right, because he's been doing that with this act since the beginning. Yeah. But it's like, but yeah, I mean, I guess the thing you're talking about, Horace and Pete is clearly licked by the flames of inspiration. Mm-hmm. It's licked by the flames, and it's kind of like, but yeah, like you were talking about, how it's like when things are, you know, when you are channeling this stuff that's like greater than yourself and literally, you know, like clearly inspired. Yeah, you're accessing your subconscious, and you're also accessing, I think, stuff outside yourself that is not even based in yourself, right? You know, that's actually just like cosmically deep. So I still think it is that, but just seeing, I don't know, noticing how much of the show
is like crying out like, hey, I'm a broken, fucked up person. Please have compassion for me.
Well, not just him, but just in general.
Yeah.
It's just these constant lines of like people suspending judgment, especially, I know I'm coming. Okay. But I want to make a disclaimer so I don't come off like I'm just becoming like a total like woke tard or whatever. Like, the idea that his behavior would make you not like his art is not only wrong, but like actually like a bad way to look at the world.
Yeah.
Fucking R. Kelly doesn't even ruin R. Kelly for me. I mean, you know, you could be like a real piece of shit and it doesn't ruin anything for me. So it isn't a question of what he did ruining it for me, but it's just seeing how it interacts is tainting it a little bit. Like, he's obsessed with the N-word, like obsessed, like the whole, like you can't, like you remember it like it's funny like a couple of times, but it's like every episode, like it's said in almost every episode, and there's just, it's like they're just going through, it's like he's just cataloging like when it's okay to say. I mean, it's funny because it's the idea that we're obsessed with wanting to say it is itself pretty funny to me. But like, you know, the idea that we're just like, oh, fucking say it. But he but you know, like at the beginning, right? It's like Alan Alda says it, but he's saying it in the context of that they serve black people when that was not allowed, and then the woman with Tourette's is saying it, and they're like, oh, like, it's okay because she has Tourette's. And then it's like, you know, like these just, it's like, when is it okay? When is it not? And there's always like, she's the Tourette's woman. It says the N-word. And there's always some black person being like, I know you didn't mean it. It's like, again, I don't mean to be that guy who's just like, you know, he's just excusing shitty behavior. Like, I don't mean like that, but it's like, he does have this fixation on these things of like blame and like when it's okay to do things. And like loopholes, you know, it's like that, like comedic loophole shit. Like, it's just, I think racial shit. I'm just like, why? How is that even relevant to the, you know?
I mean, I think part of the mystique of the N-word is the power that it has, because it's like pretty unanimously considered the worst word in the English language, and so just by nature of like the nuclear nature of it, of course a comedian is gonna want to run up and like, you know, and like Bill Burr does that thing, and Louis does it in a like somewhat softer way, where Burr, like the way he sets up a lot of his jokes is he'll say the absolute worst thing possible and then work his way back into like how like he's like he says this horrible thing, and then the joke is him winning the audience back,
right,
and,
right,
you know,
right,
and then you're on soft ground again,
right? Where Louis will lead you to the bad place. Burr throws you in the bad place and then explains why it's not, or makes you feel comfortable there, like after, you know, when he's got the water, he's like, that's what's so great about Hitler, and like takes a drink of water, and he's like, let me explain, you know, or whatever.
And so I mean, I never I know what you're saying with Louis and his relationship to the N word. The only time in my life, like I am explicitly and very much not. I am an anti-fan. I greatly dislike and disapprove and fucking hate the movies of Quentin Tarantino.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
who I would say
I don't hard disagree, but I'm okay.
I like one of his movies, but I would say that guy's got a weird thing with the N-word. That guy's got his relationship to the N-word and his insistence on using it literally dozens of times in each of his movies is weird. Like it comes across as fucking weird. I never got that weirdness with Louis. Like like with Horace and Pete, and when you do hear the N-word, like Alan Alda saying it to me, even like when it's used as that device you were just talking about, where he's like, no, we're progressive. Like we used to it fully demonstrates just like the vacuous nature of this, like just this dark hole of a human being. Like he's using the worst word possible just in his vernacular because he is the worst person possible.
It is funny. No, it is funny that there's a word. No, it's almost kind of awesome that there's a word that's like considered like that is like objectively known as the worst. But yeah, but the thing is like Come Town though, right? Like Mullen's shit with it is way funnier than Louis'. You know what I think it is that rubs me a little bit the wrong way with the Louis thing is that it seems like the loophole thing of like, well, what if a woman with Tourette's said it? What if it actually a little bit more smacks of like making this point of like of you know what I mean, of being like, well, what is a word? I mean, what does it mean? Which is deep. I mean, it is deep to be like, you know, yes, context always matters. You know, a word isn't just a word. Are you responding to Matt talking shit?
Who's MXLX?
That's my man Matt. Great dude. This is a very good dude. Don't go nuclear on Matt.
Okay.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? No, but like with Louis, there is like, yes, it is deep to ask that, or deep enough to ask that question of like, or just to be like, look, a word isn't just a word. Obviously, a word is context dependent. You know, you can say the N-word to your black friend if he lets you say it. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, obviously, you know, we like generally agree with that line of thinking, but it does a little bit annoy me the way just that Louis shit with the N-word of constantly doing it, constantly finding the loopholes, kind of making that point that I just made about speed. It has this like smarmy.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
You know, smarmy is an exaggeration, but kind of just being like, I'm smart because I'm making that point. Whereas like Mullen is so many levels beyond that.
Oh, he's just dancing between the raindrops.
You know, it's Lansing dancing between the raindrops of the cancellation, the N-word, because it's like, yeah, I can't even off the top of my head think of an example, but it's so multi-layered. He's like, imagine a guy who's ironically saying it, but he's a white nationalist who runs a barbecue stand in the fucking like, you know, pre-Civil War. Like, it's just so many layers of absurdity.
Yeah.
That to me, it's a lot deeper or more up to date. Where I don't know. The Louis. Yeah, to me, comedy is like, you know what it is, man? You know what it is? I think that we both agree, right? That like, it's not funny when someone's like making a point or like, it's not funny when someone's like, see, like, that's never funny. Right. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, and so what's funny is this weird, like dissonant, tense, ambiguous shit. Right. If for lack of there's better ways to say it, but right. I guess what it is to me, his suspending of moral judgment and his stuff about like, hey, it's just a word, you know, that kind of shit starts to feel like its own point.
Yeah.
To me, you know what I mean?
I completely get that.
Yeah. Like this thing of like, it's morally bad to take a moral stance on something or something. You know what I mean? It's like, it's morally bad to judge things, or like, you know, don't judge the guy for doing the bad thing. It's like, maybe I want to judge the guy. I don't know. It's sort of, that's like a sort of folding in on itself kind of thing. But I guess, I mean, I know I seem like I'm like overly criticizing this thing that we both agree is like total fucking genius.
No, not at all. It's
just a little bit like, Yeah, and I just I don't know, man, that time, the cancellation stuff, dude.
Well, one thing that's maybe worth talking about with Horace and Pete is the way that music gets used,
Yeah.
or doesn't get used. Um, that Paul Simon song, like, I'm decidedly not a fan of Paul Simon. I very
Really?
much dislike the music of Paul Simon.
Damn, I
I
fucking love Paul Simon. Okay.
Yeah, well, you're born and raised in New York City, like,
Yeah, but he's Long Island though. He's
yeah,
not the I don't like the African shit or whatever, but I like the
uh,
Simon and Garfunkel is fucking amazing.
yeah. But I mean, that music that he created for the show, it's like,
Oh,
I could not imagine anything
I
working
know.
better,
I
and
know.
it only works as like they only use it as entrance music and like exit music and at the
Yeah.
intermissions,
Mm-hmm.
and
It's so spare and tender and beautiful, and yeah.
it just like Horace and Pete is honestly one of, like, it's just such a heartbreaking experience. Like,
Yeah.
I'm genuinely kind of down right now from having spent a few hours with it in the
I
last
know.
24.
No. I mean, I just watched the whole thing in like 4 days, and I know. It's like it's like it feels good while you're watching it, or but then like afterwards, I'm just like fucking yeah.
Well, actually, going back to like it being a product of 2015, 2016, or whatever, and I still feel pretty confident in saying that, like, he does maybe not a good job, but he does. I feel for the most part the show it works without like without like without moralizing. The show like doesn't really moral. It just presents these very broken, fucked up people.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say that I think it's the fourth, I forget which episode, but the episode where he has the one night stand with the person who may or may not be transgender.
Oh yeah.
And then they have that conversation the next morning about transgenderism.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first time that I'll admit this openly. Like, it was the first thing that I experienced that challenged my, at the time, short-sightedness about what the transgender experience is.
Right.
Like, I was pretty Archie bunkered out, if I'm being completely honest.
Yep.
And it was the first piece of media, of popular culture, that actually challenged those ideas that I had.
I know that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because because I actually, that was an instance where making a point or making a statement, not only did it not bother me, but I actually kind of liked it because I like the point that it makes. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I guess yeah. But the thing is, the point, there's levels, because the point it made was just like, why are you grossed out by trans people? Don't be grossed out. I mean, like, it's pretty, for by now standards, that's like a pretty centrist opinion. Like, I guess in 2016, that was like actually kind of like a radical thing. Like, just,
Well, but also, like, you really, that scene like very effectively harkens back to like the character of Horace, played by Louis, who, like you said, is between these two generations of just these like broken, brutal, old men, like his father's generation, and then this sort of like demasculized or emasculated, next generation after him.
Yeah.
His initial response is like, it's okay if you're a transvestite, but you need to tell people.
Right. It's very in between. Exactly.
But that's like, that is purely from that era of like the Alan Alda character, of like that type of thinking is from 75 years ago.
Right. I also, I do kind of like how, I mean, this might even be considered not a PC line of whatever reasoning that, 5 years later, 10, whatever, 8 years later. But yeah, this thing where he's like, oh, whatever. And she's just like, you fucked your wife's sister,
Right?
He's just like, and knocked her up. Like, who the fuck are you to judge me?
Exactly.
Which is like, I mean, that's also a little dicey, because you're acting as though being trans is bad, and
right,
he has to forgive her because he did something wrong, and she did something wrong too, when in fact we don't think she did something wrong by just literally being trans. But it is cool how it's like his his ability to suspend judgment about people. It's like his sort of defeated, who am I to judge anyone thing does lead him to a certain openness, with people. Like, it's like he's just sort of like, all right, I'll listen.
Honestly, and I remember quite clearly, and I double checked to make sure that my memory is correct, that when the show came out, the cultural impact of the show, everybody was saying this. All the Dave Cooley, the NPR TV guy, everybody was saying the exact same thing, which is like TV's never going to be the same again. Louis C.K. has created a new model, all the way from top to bottom, from like self-funding this thing, distributing it himself, having the episodes. Like if you go back and watch the episodes, you'll see that one episode is an hour long, the next one's 40 minutes, the next one's 30 minutes. Like there's no adherence at all to the norms of standard television making. Thematically, the things he was dealing with, and everyone was saying TV will never be the same again. This is a gauntlet moment. And when he got thrown away, so did the promise of TV changing in that way. And
Interesting.
Maybe the things are connected, maybe they're not.
Right. Well, this thing is, people said that about Twin Peaks, and it's like, it didn't really, like we still ended up with fucking How I Met Your Mother or whatever.
Right. But when you consider that he did have all these deals in place, to produce all these shows for FX, and that he was working on the show with Albert Brooks, there was at least the promise of TV getting a little more interesting.
I know. Yeah, no, it's a good question, because I'm like, when it comes to his cancellation, right, it's like, I'm always thinking about like, was it fair to him?
Right.
Was it fair?
Was
it fair to other people, people? But you raised the question of like, what did that prevent? What did that take away from culture?
I'll say this, as you can tell, as your friend Matt can tell, I have a lot of books behind me, and a lot of them, you can see some of the titles and see that like I tend to be a conspiracy-minded individual. And like I've laughed when I've heard like boomer jazz types say things like, oh, the CIA killed Jimi Hendrix because he was about to make a record with Miles Davis, man. And that, I will say that taking Louis C.K. down, I feel like maybe there was an aspect of like, oh shit, his like art is getting a little too serious.
I don't know. As far as Hendrix making a record with Miles, I would think from the CIA's point of view, that could only be good for like America, right? It's like,
no, that was at a time of like black radicalism that they were literally infiltrating the Black Panthers.
True. I know, I'm like so naive. To me, like pro-blackness and like patriotism are like in my head, that's like the same thing, but no. Tends to not be the vibe. But
anyway, all that is to say is that I think there was a promise of some really interesting stuff coming out that died in the womb. His cancellation.
Just to play, not devil's advocate, but the opposite, the advocate of a woke scolding of pro cancellation fucking cuck dude. Think about that movie I Love You Daddy. His movie that no one's seen because it's been just whatever. When that Times article came out, he lost distribution. They canceled it.
He
lost distribution, and it's obviously I want to see it more than anything.
I've heard it sucks.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, obviously I still want to see it, and in my mind I'm still like, it probably is kind of amazing or whatever.
Right.
But still, think about what it's about, right? It's another movie about it's another thing about like, hey man, it's okay to do XYZ.
I don't know if he's saying it's okay. I don't know that he's saying it's okay. I think
maybe not.
I think it's more of confessional than it is.
But even still, it is that confessional thing of just like, as long as you confess it and you're open, it's okay, or like whatever. It's like,
one last thing I'll say about the cancellation thing, and I feel comfortable saying that I have my misgivings about a variety of things that have happened in the culture war in the last 10 plus years. I've got my misgivings with the BLM movement. I've got my misgivings with the MeToo Time's Up movement. I will say separate from that, or maybe part of that, when he got taken down, that shit was, the Me Too movement was at a fever pitch. So much so that I remember at the job I had at the time, like we would literally like fuck with each other. I would walk into the kitchen knowing that one of the chefs is like a huge fan of Seinfeld and be like, yo, man, you heard they just got Seinfeld, you know? It was that like
they got, right?
Yeah,
he just got.
Yeah. Yeah. And when that story, when the people that wrote that article for the Times, when they got wind of it, when that article got greenlit, when they caught a big fish.
Yeah, no,
you know what I mean? That article
yes,
would not have had any of the impact or import if it occurred as an isolated event.
Yeah.
And it fucking angers me that I'm not dismissing, the seriousness of his, sexual misconduct, or the seriousness of what the experience of the people who experienced it was. But the fact that cultural fervor is what created that article.
Yeah.
It was, people were gassed up, and him getting, called out within that context gave credence and juice to a movement that I think was very flawed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I feel that. I'm with that. It's interesting. I remember there was some, I can't remember who did this survey, but around that time, or maybe like a little after the Me Too thing had like really like crested or whatever, there was some magazine or outlet or whatever did this. They had something where they took like 10 or like a handful of the people who had been canceled on Me Too grounds during the thing, and they like interviewed people and asked them to kind of like rate, rank for rate each one, right? Like how
Harvey Weinstein at one end,
right. Or I think it was Cosby at one end. Well, they didn't tell people what the end was. They just had they just asked people what. So wait, did we talk about this, or this is for the viewers then? If we didn't talk about this,
I don't know that we've talked about this. No.
Well, it was they interviewed people, a lot of people to like rate on some scale how bad they thought the offenses of these various men were.
Right. 10 being the worst, 1 being the most benign.
Yeah. And they interviewed both women and men. And because those were the two genders then, and they asked, and apparently women and men were very, very much in agreement. Like it was almost it was almost the exact same ranking, with Cosby at the top. The bottom was Aziz Ansari.
Yeah, exactly.
Because remember, he like didn't pay for dinner or something.
No, he ordered red wine when she wanted white.
Right. Something like that. Right. And then it's like Cosby's just like Satan and shit. Yeah, and it's like, and apparently men and women were very much in agreement, except with Louis. Louis was the one, right, where women were just like, he's fucking Satan, and men were just like, like, and so it's just funny. I was thinking about that, because even like right now, like viewers are probably just like, how bad does Charlie and Jeremiah think it is? Like, it's hard to quantify.
It's bad. Yeah.
It's hard to quantify how bad.
I'd be angry if someone did it to my sister.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
If I found out a friend of mine was doing that, I would think they were a fucking creep, and I would like to think that I would confront them about it.
Sadly, I was in that exact position with Andrew.
Right.
And this is what's, but yes, that was just interesting to me that like, I don't know, I was talking with someone last night, and they were like, wait, it might've been Jessica, or maybe it was our friend Brenda was talking about, I think it was Jessica it said that like, that, of all these words, people, these use these words like abuser and harasser, like, there's this whole spectrum of like how we use or misuse these words, but that like the word sex pest is like kind of, she was like, it's in many cases kind of lame, but in his case, it is the exact fair assessment, like sex pest. Like that's the Jessica, if you're watching this and you didn't say that and it was Bran, okay, my apologies. But like, I don't know, but that was interesting. Pest.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, it's like judgmental enough, but I wonder about the distribution aspect though. Also, not just this thing of like, making this like apologia for doing bad things to people, but also I kind of wonder about him knowing that he was about to get got.
Well,
like deciding I'm going to do this completely independently distributed thing. No studios. I pay for everything. It comes out on my website. I am now exiting from institutions.
Okay.
You know, like how conscious was that? You know,
let me say a couple treat things about this, because I
couple of treat things.
Yeah. Number one, I had a friend, my boss got MeToo'd.
Okay.
He was a semi-public figure. Gigantic article came out, and
you want to say who it is, or
I mean, his name was Thomas. He's a restaurateur, and Thomas Carter. It's whatever. You could look it up. Look up Thomas Carter eater. You know, it'll come out.
He was an eater. He ate someone he's not supposed to eat.
I mean, you know, going back to that scale of 1 to 10, he was much close. He was Aziz. You know, if Aziz is 1, he was a 2.
Okay.
But he got, you know, he actually got called out for like workplace toxicity. Not even, you know,
like vibe shit. Like,
I mean, he was, you know, he and I always got along well, but you know, in the early days of him opening his restaurant, he definitely crossed a lot of lines, but more just like verbally abusive.
Right.
But he found out that an article was being written about him, I swear to God, like 8 months before it actually came out.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, went into action, you know, hired like a crisis management team, learned, you know, started going to like I hope I'm not like whatever. He started doing like a counseling to figure out how to be like a better, more like empathetic boss, employer. But the point is, people get, when these kinds of articles come out, I will not say anything more about this than I'm about to say. I know someone going through it right now. They know an article's coming out about them, and they are in the throes of figuring out how to get ahead of it.
Let's rush to finish this podcast so you can tell me. Because
yeah.
Music or no, you don't even. Yeah,
I'm not even going to say.
Okay,
but anyway, so I do know for a fact. I am assuming with a lot of confidence that Louis C.K. and his team knew for a substantial period of time before the article came out that this was coming. And in that Times article, it does say that he was writing letters and emails to the individual women apologizing for what he'd done.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah.
And I'm sure that was probably more the expression of him getting ahead of it rather than creating a piece of art about it.
Right.
The other thing, and I swear to God, I'm the only person that I've ever heard say this that has never made sense to me. I've never seen this written anywhere. Is he chose to go away? All of his comedy specials, or at least the 4 that had come out before the cancellation, he had shot, edited, and funded himself and released them through his website.
Yeah.
He wasn't dependent on anyone. Not to a studio, not to a distributor. Horace and Pete, again, before the cancellation, he funded it, he directed it, he wrote it, he designed the distribution model for it.
Yeah.
So for him, and he lost. Sorry, there's a fly I keep trying to catch. He lost a lot of work. You know, he stopped being booked for gigantic shows where he would have made a lot of money. But the production of television, there wasn't a studio that said we're no longer going to work with you. He was the studio.
Right.
It was always strange. So I understood, like, okay, he'll probably chill out for a minute. It took him longer to come back than I would have thought.
Yeah, well, he may have been trying to figure out a way to work it into his stuff, because when he started doing stand-up about it, it was like, I thought, really great and funny, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I something. This is sort of, I mean, yeah, this is kind of bringing back to like just stuff from the show that's not about his cancellation, and this is something that I thought, I'm kind of changing subject a little bit from the cancellation, but it's like this is something where I'm going to come off like a little more. It's like, I don't know if conservative is the right word, but kind of like, see what you think about this, man. There's a lot on that show. You know how I was saying with like Generations, man, there was this thing that I latched onto that kind of like made me sad, or like that a question that he's asking that I don't feel is like just a question that's really basically making a point, but is like an actual question, is like, do you remember that shit where he's talking to his daughter and he's giving her advice about something with a relationship, And she's like, I just feel like you're being kind of condescending, Dad. And he goes, I'm not trying to be condescending. And then he catches himself and he's like, well, you know what? Why can't anyone? He's like, no one can condescend to anybody. Like, what? So just everyone is just totally equal. Like, no one can give anyone advice. He's like, I'm your father. And she goes, barely. And it's like, the thing that on a social commentary level, I guess you could say it's political in a very meta large sense. But like that question where he's like, this does get into the moral culpability thing, but like when he's like, he's like asking the question, so what? Nobody can give anyone advice anymore, condescend, we're all equal. No, he's asking like, so nobody has wisdom. And it's like, she's like, well, in your case, no. So you know what I mean? So the question, this is kind of what I'm saying, where sometimes there's a difference between the individual human family dynamics of the characters versus the like political shit or social shit. It's like in the case of the family, no, he has no ground to give anyone advice. But like, that was a question that kind of haunted me on some, like, making me feel a little traditionalist or conservative, on the sense of like, well, if every generation, like, have you noticed how everyone our age, when you talk about your parents, it's always like, I'm healing scars and trying to not be like them.
Yeah.
Nobody we know. And so little in culture do we hear people being like, my father taught me how to do this and
really?
how to be a man. Do people say that? Because I feel like the narrative is always like, and this has kind of got a political, okay, let me finish and then prove me wrong, because that'll probably make me feel good to be proved a little bit wrong. But like this sense of, like this sense of like, if you're into like progressive politics, and like you're into like this idea that we're like evolving or something, it like inherently means that the young know more than the old, and that the old are like more evil. This vibe of like, my father beat women, I don't beat them, but I'm still an asshole. And then my son can be, you know what I mean? Like, can be even better. And in this show, he kind of asks this question of like, well, the son is not necessarily better. He's just, the son-in-law is just like this cucked out guy. And you know what I mean? When he asked that question of like, what happened to an older person being able to give you advice?
Yeah.
I don't know. There was something about that kind of bummed me out. Like,
it should bum you out.
Yeah. Especially as somebody who's getting older, the idea that I'm just less wise instead of more.
I don't know. I don't know what I mean.
Yeah. The world changes and you aren't up to it. So then the young know shit that you don't know.
I don't know if, because to me, that is a heartbreaking bummer of a thing to hear. And I will say, as I said before, like, I don't have a relationship with my father.
Right.
And when I think about him, it actually makes me really sad that I would probably say something exactly like what A.D. Bryant's character said to her father. And it makes me sad for a number of reasons, not the least of which is I know how bad that must hurt to hear. Doesn't matter how much of a deadbeat dad you may have been. There's no way that isn't like a devastating blow to hear.
No, for sure.
Doesn't matter. However justified it is to hear your child say like, you're barely a dad. Like, I can't. We
don't have kids, so we don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. And if I'm being totally honest, that's one of the reasons I don't have kids. I don't want to have that. Really, I already have that relationship going one way. I don't want it going the other way. Right. And I mean, I will, but I'll say that, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking specifically of a mutual friend we have right now who only talks about his father with absolute reverence. And, like my stepdad who raised me, he was the best guy I ever knew. I know factually that he did a lot of fucked up shit in his life. And, but he was the best guy I ever knew. And I've always looked forward, like, I mean, I say this as like a flaw. I've, always sort of looked around for trying, for people to have like a fatherly relationship with, like, searched advice for people who are my dad's age,
Okay. And you felt like you have gotten wisdom from older people
without question,
who are wise because they're older,
without question.
Good.
And in fact, my prejudice goes exactly the other way, which is like, why would I listen to what some fucking 25-year-old has to say? Like, his balls haven't even dropped yet,
Well, yes. I mean, this is yeah.
But also, I think right now, and totally guilty of this. There is this okay boomer attitude, which is like, I'm dismissive. Like I am dismissive of people my parents' age because boomers tend to be reprehensible scum. I would never point that same dismissiveness towards someone like my grandfather's age.
Right.
You know?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Cause I'm a little bit more on that vibe where it's like, yeah, I have all these criticisms of boomers, but right. Exactly. But I don't think that because political, being a political progressive, that means everything's been getting better and therefore everything in the past just gets worse the further you go back. Right. It's like, it's not just this linear progression. It's like boomers could suck, but the silent generation could be in certain ways better. And maybe
right.
the generation before that is worse in certain ways, but
yeah.
better in other ways, that it's not just a line of progress. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, boomers are like the first generation of parents to like go to therapy to become, I mean, ultimately it's like a narcissistic activity to, spend more time with themselves. But on the surface anyway, it's like, oh, how can I be like a better person for, my kids or whatever, which,
well, ostensibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's what like religion used to supposedly do, but did not.
I mean, I'll say this, like, no matter, like, I'm saying this as like a 44-year-old man with like enough life experience and hindsight, without question, I would rather have, as Shane Gillis would say, Fox News dad, who's like, maybe, has like some like racist fucking tendencies that like you have to either like ignore or call out, than like some guy who's like stuck in therapy and, like trying to figure out who he is at age 70. Like,
right.
No questions asked. I'd rather have someone who, as a dad, is like a Fox News dad who like actually gives a fuck and, has like some amount of selflessness in the family relationship.
Right. Or maybe maybe having a father who has a sense of self and a spine, even if the spine is kind of a bad spine.
Yeah, and even if like
there's a value to that over having a dad that's just like completely spineless. I don't know.
And like, maybe the ideology is at best incoherent and at worst just like utterly reprehensible.
Yeah. I guess I just, yeah. Cause I don't know, like with my dad, like I have, especially recent years. Yeah. I have a lot of like things where like I'm identifying ways that he failed, just like really critical shit about my dad. And, and yes, that very therapied out kind of thing of like, oh, I realize things about myself that are bad that I got from him, so I do think that's valuable, but yeah, I bristle a little bit when it becomes this like totally politicized, almost like this progressive capital P, when it takes on that texture where you're like, my father is bad because that was patriarchy and I'm better now through therapy.
I cannot relate to that in any way.
And we're getting better and they were bad and there's nothing to learn from them. It's like, no, there's a lot I could be learning from that generation. And if I have problems with my dad, it's because he didn't hook it up, but it's not like that. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I'll say this, like, one thing that is, part of this, like, okay, boomer milieu, if you will, is that like realizing that a lot of the adults in my life, who always have sort of presented themselves as like radicals, like in the 60s and 70s, we really, walked it like we talked it, man. And we were, part of the civil rights movement and we protested the war. And it's like, no, you weren't serious about any of that shit. You were smoking weed and having random sex with people.
It was
narcissism. It was not any kind of actual leftism or revolutionary.
Well, then new left. I mean, that's what it was just fucking like college kid shit,
It was bullshit. Like, and that's why, like, these people are just utterly, like they're on like a feeding tube on like MSNBC because it's just the lack of depth is like they cling to it because it's all they know.
Yeah. For the record, I'm going to put this out there. My father taught me about discipline, and not discipline like kicking my ass. I mean, like discipline, like sitting down for like 2 hours and learning how to play some Debussy.
Yeah.
Well, at age 9, and the idea that if you have talent, it's actually fucked up to not use it. Like if you're good, if you were called upon to like do music,
it's sinful.
Yeah. He's probably a little bummed at how far I took it. Like I'm actually like doing this for my life's work now. But I mean, it's, it says, it taught me about hard work. So I appreciate that. But but yeah. I mean, at least, you know, I mean, so yeah, the Louis, the thing is like it's like very caught in between.
Mm-hmm.
There are no positive models of how to be a man on that show at all. I mean, there's very few in our culture now
Mm-hmm.
at all.
Mm-hmm. It's so
But
sad
on
that
that show
like,
especially, you know.
yeah, like the most sympathetic character, the character who like seems the most good natured, is like mentally ill
Yeah.
and like unable to have any control over any aspect of his life.
Yep. Yeah, no, he's heavily medicated, can't
Have,
leave the house, and if he
yep.
doesn't get his pills, he has, he's would be a homeless, hallucinating
Right.
guy. Yeah, I know. No, I mean, yeah, he is the most kind of, there's like a noble quality to him. Like when he goes on that date with that might be the most crushing episode. When you remember that one? Did you rewatch that?
I didn't rewatch it, but I have a memory of
he goes on this internet date with this like girl who turns out to be 26, and he like didn't like know that because she like lied that she was older, and it's like they meet, and like she's this kind of like tastefully anti-feminist kind of like a non-edgy version of Red Scare chick who's just like, I actually like a man to do, you know, she's like, what happened to, she's like a, you know, like what happened to chivalry kind of girl, you know, and he's just like, you know, like he's on some like, it's good to be a gentleman, you know, he shows that he's kind of like into treating women well in a gentlemanly way, and she's like, you're a gentleman, it's this kind of thing. And then it's like he brings her over to meet the family, and they just completely abuse her and like out him as a mentally ill person.
Yeah. I do remember that.
And she just leaves, and it's just like utterly fucking humiliating. It's a crushing fucking episode. But that's an interesting one where you see she's like a very believable character, you know, this like contemporary woman who's like, she's not conservative, but she's kind of just like, she's like, I wish boys my age would kind of man up a little bit and, you know, stand up straight and pull out a chair for me. And she's like, I like 50-year-old guys because they do that, you know, like I don't know if there's this sort of, I don't know, appeal to like benevolent, you know, I don't even use the word patriarchy, but like whatever, you know, benevolent traditional masculinity of some kind, you know, where you like take care of a woman or whatever, you know. Yeah. But it's fucked because he's being that guy. He's the best example that you see of a guy who could do that, you know, bring the positive elements from traditional masculinity, but get rid of abusive stuff and maybe have this, you know, maybe a good example of how to be a man, but he can't do that because he's mentally ill and she doesn't know that. And then you know, and then it ruins. Yeah.
And he's also the only character you see in the entire series who, in his way, demonstrates kind of healthier ways to communicate in moments of conflict. Like when, you know, like when I'm thinking of the scene where he tells Horace, hey, the bar down the street's closing. Some of our chairs need to be replaced. Maybe we can go and, you know, buy the chairs. And Horace just says, yeah, okay. And what he says in response is, you know, you could say that's a really good idea.
Right.
And that's just like a perfectly clean, like mature way to like express your needs to somebody.
Yeah. No. He is the most adult and most sane, you know. Yeah. He's the most sane out of all these people, you know, but
I got to say, Edie Falco's character really leaves me feeling pretty sad and disenchanted and just hopeless. Like her, I think her character is, you know, for whatever strange relationship Louis C.K. has to women, I think he did a pretty good job of presenting a complex relationship between, like, especially when it flashes back to the scene of their mother, and you kind of see the origin of this like really unhealthy relationship between mother and daughter.
Well, yeah, it's so brutal. They don't really show. Well, I guess they sort of kind of implicitly show him the father beating the kids, but what they really show is her beating the daughter. I mean, Edie Falco's mom beating her. It's like the second order,
and you see,
order effects of the, you know,
and definitely of the three main characters, like her character is the most callous, the sort of, I mean, clearly the least nostalgic, and sort of, you know, even like at the end when Horace's character dies, her response is like, he was a guy.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
and you know,
well, she does break down and cry. I mean, that is
yes,
the last scene is her crying and stuff.
yeah, but
yeah.
she's a hardened character.
Oh yeah. Well, she had to be hardened to like get out of there and shit. And I mean, she like yeah, she doesn't smile throughout the entire show until she meets that guy, Harold, the like really hilarious black dude.
The dude from The Wire that
the dude from The Wire.
that you sampled.
The dude that I sample in We Are Not the Same. I fucking love that dude. He's almost like the same guy
in everything.
I think
that guy died recently, actually.
Oh damn, yeah.
Yeah.
He yeah, he's awesome. But she seems to really, I mean, that's kind of a happy ending that he's helping her move the stuff out of the bar, and they seem happy to. I don't know. There is a way that she kind of made it out. She beat cancer, and she's got a man now, and he seems good. That seems like some kind of happy ending there.
You know, it's like and it's sort of acknowledged that the bar, Horace and Pete's, is a fucking black hole, and she's sort of like closing the black hole, walking away from it, presumably to go live a healthier life. Most likely she will continue to carry that trauma forward and have, you know, an unhealthy life. But, you know, that is, and I think for people, you know, and going back to the Cheers thing, that really calls out to me is like dive bars like that. Like, you know what it smells like, you know what it feels like. And those places are black holes.
Yeah.
They are, you know, the people that show up at a bar at opening time and sit there. I worked at a bar like that. A bar that, just like the bar on the show, was open for over 100 years on the Upper West Side.
What bar was that?
You probably went there as a teenager. The West End.
Oh, the West.
I worked at the West End,
dude. My first gig in New York was at the West End Gate.
The West End Gate, exactly,
in 8th grade, and it was me and Alex Cymerman, who you probably
I remember met. Alex.
Did you meet
Alex?
Alex?
Yeah.
Oh, right. He was at fucking dude. What am I talking about?
I have a picture of you guys when you were like 13. Yeah.
Me and Alex Cymerman and Kim, when she was going by Keith, on drums. Yeah. And we were called Crystal Peace Pills, which I never liked, but that was Alex's idea at the last minute. And and we played Fugazi covers.
Yeah. In that back room where the beer pong tables were. Yeah.
We played Fugazi, and we actually played a Green Day cover too, because we were at that we were at like a liminal point between knowing about childish stuff and cool stuff or whatever. If Fugazi is even cool, they have not aged well for me. But in any case,
Minor Threat's way better.
Indeed. But West End Gate. Okay, that was around for 100 years.
It was around for 100 years and over 100 years, and I worked there for like a year and a half, 2 years, and it was, I mean, there were genuine, I don't even know if you see this much in New York anymore, actual barflies. There was a core group of like 5 to 10 guys who didn't have families, who, you know, worked whatever jobs they did, and they would show up at 3 p.m. and stay until 10 p.m. And, you know, they never had to order. You always, you know, they never said, I'll try that beer. It was always like, you knew what they drank, and you just poured it until they left. And these people, I mean, this is a value judgment. They led very empty, depressing lives.
Yeah, those are losers. Yeah.
And that's, you know, so the dive bar, especially one like, you know, on the show, Horace and Pete's, or the West End where I worked, like, these places are legitimately black holes where those kinds of broken people congregate.
Yeah. You got to wonder, like, it's funny because also the word dive bar, what that means, or what that has meant for the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years in New York, there actually aren't really even
there's a handful
of dive bars at all. I mean, what people call a dive bar,
it's like a simulacrum of a dive bar.
Yeah. It's like a hipster bar that's like not that fancy or something, you know, or had like, you know, Big Buck Hunter in the 2000s, you know, the fucking
or, you know, like in the case of a lot of these places, they actually, it's like cosplay. They actually spend a lot of money to get, you know, a Daryl Hannah poster on Daryl. You know what I mean? Farrah Fawcett,
or like Bo Derek or some shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The like, like the essence of a dive bar is like the misery and shit. And it's like, I mean, it's a class thing, obviously, as well.
And you know, I have to go pretty soon. I got to go walk my dog, so I gotta wrap it up. But you know, that was one of my favorite scenes in the entire show, was when that kind of young guy comes in and he orders a beer, and Uncle Pete charges him more than the guy next to him, and they have that exchange. And you know, Horace is like, "Look, we're charging him less because this is all he has.
Right. No, he's like, what? Yeah. And the kid's just like, is that like out and out discrimination? I mean, I'm gay. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And he goes, look, if he looks like him, he pays $3. If he looks like you, he pays $4.50. And then he's like, why? Yeah. And he's like, cause you get to drink a beer and
laugh at us.
And laugh at us. He just gets the beer. And he's just like, so it's a douche tax?
Exactly.
And Louis like, yeah. And the kid goes, acceptable.
Yeah.
It's like, which is totally what but yeah, even that is like, I mean, because I do like the little forgiving things where someone, you hate that kid, or not hate, but you're like, yeah, he's a douchebag, but then he accepts that he's a douchebag.
Yeah, he gets it at least as an abstraction. Yeah,
and you're like, okay, I don't hate that guy. Or like that gay character that comes in and he's like such an obnoxious asshole.
Yeah.
And then like very quickly he's like, I'm sorry, my dad's in town. And he gives this little, you hate him. And then he immediately gives you this tiny sliver where you're like, he has a rough thing with his family. Maybe it has to do with homophobia. Who fucking knows? Who am I to judge? Well, those forgiving, I do like that. A lot of those little hurt people excusing people's bad shit. A lot of that is good on the show. I like.
Well, and that's, I guess, that would be the final thing I would say about Horace and Pete. And what I think I love so much and respond to so much about it is that it is like a very masterful demonstration of humanity. People normally say there's so much humanity in the way this guy writes. There's so much humanity in the way this guy makes films. And typically that's meant to, that's understood that, oh, you really see like the best of people in this. And it's like, well, another aspect of humanity is that there are a lot of very unflattering qualities, a lot of really broken, difficult, fucked up qualities. And showing it the way that it is shown on Horace and Pete, highlighting those aspects of humanity is another way to show humanity. And he really gets at it. And that's why I think, like the end result is you're just left like feeling really kind of sad at the show.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I don't want to keep you too long, but you remember in that, I think it's the last or second to last episode, Edie Falco's interviewing that guy who's an ex-convict for a job, right? And so it gets like really like clear example of like guilt, innocence, punishment, and it's like anyone who's that does kind of, I mean, it does get that thing of like, okay, you want to MeToo people? Are you into, as they call carceral logic? It's like, okay, so you want to do the prison system with Louis C.K., like whatever, and it's like this guy is, he's like, it's hard to get a job. So you feel for him. Yeah. We should. Yeah. I mean, let's end it on that note where I bring it back and say, yeah, man, what you said about the show ultimately showing everyone's humanity. That is what I love about it. The ambiguity of it. I mean, the sadness it leaves you with. That is still, I still love that. It's still genius because of that. Just in case I have been riding too hard this angle of making it like it's just apologetics for bad people or trying to take the stink off him. Because like that's not mainly what it is. It was just like this new layer that kind of made me like get something new every time you watch it. Because I kind of like, I don't know, man. Because a lot of stuff in my past work, early Extra Life, and especially 7 Tiers, some unsavory shit in there where I'm kind of like, there's some shit where it's just like, hey, I'm a bad guy, but at least I'm not a rapist, bro. It's like, okay, fine, but like, what are you gonna actually do with this?
Yeah.
But in any case, word. Well, dude. Javier and Pearl, give them my regards. And can you bring them on? Can you show them on the stream?
Yeah,
they're right there. I want to say bye to Javi and Pearl.
I got one of them right
here. Fucking Pearl, man. Look at this little, just a fucking.
Right,
she's microscopic. All right, she wants to go do it, dude. As always, amazing to roll with you, man. And yeah. Text me later about this stuff that we couldn't talk about on the air. So.
Yeah, and I don't know if you like can edit or whatever, if you want to take that Israel shit out up top.
No. Let it rip, dude. They can, they can handle. They're big boys. They can handle it. Yeah. And everyone. Yeah, okay. Yeah, dude. Peace. Much love to you. And and everyone else. I'm just gonna plug Jeremiah's record. Check out his new record. It's amazing. It's been getting great press. And the stream has not gone away. The Last Things live stream is continuing, but it's going to be a little bit more trickling You know, I've got a couple guests lined up, but it's not going to be week after week after week. It's going to be the way it is. And I'm working on new solo music, guitar, baritone guitar and voice. You might see me playing some informal low-key shows in the city. And and there's an Extra Life tour coming up in November with dates that will be announced probably in a couple weeks. Word. Thanks everyone for tuning in, commenting, etc., etc. If anyone wants to join the Last Things Discord, track me down, click on the link below or whatever. And everyone have a great rest of your Sunday. Peace.